Okay, IEP season, let's discuss IEP member participation. There are mandated members, okay, parent, obviously. All right, then you have the mandated special education teacher, the mandated general education teacher, and then somebody with the authority, meaning a school administrator. It could be the special education teacher, but it must be somebody who meets the two-prong definition for the LEA, okay? That's the local education agent, okay? Meaning an administrator. And this is or like I said, somebody who's been designated as that role. So what is the two-prong definition? And we'll get into why the other hats are important. But those three school employees must be there. Now, can it be two? Yes, you technically could have somebody wearing the hat of the administrator of the LEA that also has, let's say, a general education degree. Could ideally happen, okay? Which means that it's perfectly legal to have two people there, but they have to designate that, hey, I'm here in these dual roles as not only general education teacher, but also as the LEA, and then the special education teacher, and then the parent. Okay, so it can happen to only have four people or three people, okay? But most of the time it should be three: general education, special education, and LEA. Those are the mandated people. Now, what about the additional people, OT, speech language? I'll get into that real quick. But let's talk about the two-prong definition of what it means to be a local education agent, which is the administrative head. They have to have a knowledge of the resources that exist within your geographic boundaries of your school system, okay? They must have knowledge of all the resources and things that are available in your geographic area. And number two is they have to have the authority to be able to agree to utilize school resources on behalf of your child. They have to have the authority to commit school money on behalf of your child if your child requires that in order to receive a free, appropriate public education. Now you sit there and you go, okay, well, that's a two-pronged definition of an LEA. And that's where a lot of schools get potentially into trouble, is because they just designate, oh, a principal will be there. A principal doesn't necessarily meet the true definition of an LEA. Now, the special education director for any school system, yes, that would be the proper LEA. Well, there's only one special education director, but a lot of IEPs, which means that the LEA or the special education director can delegate that authority to whomever. But at the same time, let's say you're going to your run-of-the-mill IEP meeting and you're not asking for anything out of the ordinary, nothing that would require a commitment of outside resources for your child. At that point, I don't make a big deal about a principal sitting in on the meeting or having, let's say, the special education teacher wear both hats, the LEA and the special ed teacher. Okay, don't make a big deal about that. But let's say you're going into your meeting and this time you're asking for, let's say, a behavior analyst to be involved. Your district doesn't hire one, so they have to go out within your geographic boundary and find a board certified behavior analyst. At that point, you're asking the district to commit additional resources for your child. At that meeting, you need to have somebody with that authority and with that knowledge of those resources and be able to commit those resources for your child when you ask at the meeting. And so when a school says, well, I don't have the authority, well, then you don't have an LEA at your meeting. If they have to sit there and say, I'll get back to you, then that's not a proper LEA. They need to be able to provide that answer and that commitment at the meeting, and that's just how it is, okay? So you got to be mindful of that. And at the beginning of your meeting as a parent, you need to make it very clear and ask, what is your role? What is your role? What is your role? And whoever the LEA is, if you're going to be asking for anything additional that would require a commitment of resources for your child, then you need to ask the LEA at that time, let's say it's the principal, do you have the authority to commit the resources of the district? Or are you going to have to ask for permission because I'm going to be asking for X, Y, and Z? Good thing to ask before the meeting starts. Now, What's very good to ask is if you know in advance of your IEP meeting that you're going to be requesting these things, then it's always good business sense, because you are the business leader for your child. You are the CEO of your IEP team. Nobody knows your child better than the parent. And it's good practice for you to send an email and a message to the special education director in advance of your meeting that you plan to ask for additional resources. All right. I think that's smart. That way the LEA can sit there and either be there themselves, or they can delegate an answer or some flexibility to whoever is acting as LEA. As far as the other members, they're not mandated members, but if your child requires OT, requires speech language, then at that point, at least for your annual IEP meeting, it's good to have these individuals present. Now, can they participate and not be physically present? Yes, that's allowed. But at the same time, if you want them at your annual IEP meeting, then you need to designate on the paper when the invitations go out that you want to invite these people to make sure that they're in participation. Because they're extremely busy, then if you don't make that designation, then many times they'll provide their recommendations in writing, which is allowed, but then it will be designated that they did not attend physically, but they participated through their recommendations. That's allowed. But if you want them physically there, you need to, when you're filling out the IEP invitation forms, you need to designate that you want them physically present. Okay? And then please have the common courtesy to release them after their portion of the IEP meeting is completed. Let them go back to what they're doing. The only people that cannot leave an IEP meeting is the LEA, the parent, the special ed teacher, and the general ed teacher. They must remain. But release the SLP, the OT, the physical therapist, the behavior analyst once their portion of the meeting is completed. Okay? They're related service personnel. They're in orbit around your IEP team. This is your IEP team. These other individuals orbit around. Okay? Understand that. So they don't have to be at every meeting. That means that during the school year, if you have a meeting to amend your child's IEP and you're going to be talking about speech language services, then yes, this person needs to be invited in order to be a part of the team.